Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very special video lined up for you of one of my personal favorite disc golf courses in Washington. It's called Tall Firs Disc Golf Course and it's located in Monroe, Washington, north of Seattle. This is a pay-to-play course, but in my opinion, it has been worth every penny that I have ever spent playing here. It is situated on an old ball golf course, and as you can see from the drone flight, it's absolutely gorgeous and a bomber course where big arms have a big advantage on the blue layout. Starting off on the blue tees, we have hole 1, which is a par 4, 567 feet, 173 meters. We have OB to the left in the adjacent fairway, and this basket is placed on an old putting green over here, and we see some ground play usually around the green. The tee shot is very important to obviously get out of this first gap, where you can choose to go aggressive or throw a safer sidearm, which I opt for here. But I make a fairly big mistake here right out of the gates, throwing a sidearm right into the ground, and at this point I just grab a defender and try to get as far down the fairway as I possibly can. I leave myself with still a little work to do, try to get up and down, and I grab my harp and just try to throw a hyzer. But I sawed that off and actually ended up taking one of the branches and left myself with this really long putt. Here I am, jump putting with a pier, just making sure I get it to the basket. But as you can see from the flag that's on the basket that's moving, there's actually some wind that I didn't pick up on, and my putter just glided way past the basket. And a little foreshadowing, but my bag here is about to fall over, and this is almost a metaphor for how my game is feeling like right now, with everything falling apart. Tapping in a double bogey on hole 1. Hole 2 is a par 3, 215 feet, 66 meters. This is a fairly ideal sidearm hole with a basket placed on a precarious hill over here. Very common to see rollaways. And then we have this backstop of trees, which if you get inside of are absolutely terrible to try do anything from. I grab my harp again on the tee pad, just trying to throw it flat, but pull over on it a little bit. So seeing as though this is a casual round, I'm still trying to give it some sort of run here. Grab a shield on a turbo putt, and just end up flying by the basket right over it. And I actually ended up in these Christmas trees, putting myself in a very tricky situation. It's hard to see from the camera angle here, but I'm actually throwing a lefty turbo here just to try to get out of the trees and tap in an easy bogey at that point. Hole 3 is a par 4, 599 feet, 183 meters. First half of the hole is this tight woods tunnel that you want to get as far down as possible. Once we get into the second half, we have this greater opening with some guardian trees just early left of the basket, and really want to avoid those. Now a good tee shot here is commonly about halfway down, just back to the flat spot. Here I am trying to do that with a sidearm flex shot, but leave it just a little low. And I actually ended up hitting this fence that's guarding the tee pad of 10. So that leaves me with no other option than this thumber over the fence. Just trying to punch it as far down the fairway as I possibly can. Now I do so fairly well. I'm almost out of the woods at this point, but I'm at a very awkward angle here. Because of the footing, I opt to go for a sidearm turnover to try have it drift all the way to the basket. But I end up throwing something a little bit too stable in my fortress and just had it fought out a little bit too much into some more Christmas trees behind the basket. You might be able to see a couple branches moving inside as I try to get a putt off. Just barely hit cage, but doesn't fall in. So that's another bogey on the scorecard right now, putting me at +4 over par through 3 holes. Hole 4 is a par 3, 227 feet, 69 meters long. And this is one that I'm definitely looking to get after that horrendous start. Here we commonly see people throw a really big hyzer and just try knife it in at the basket. But here I grab a very beat up shield and just try to throw it right up the gut at the basket. Hopefully scare the basket too. The distance is pretty spot on, but didn't really give it a scare. It just scooted up right next to the basket for an easy tap and birdie. Moving on to hole 5, which is a par 4, 565 feet, mano right of the tree on the left, 172 meters, slightly curving off to the left and uphill towards the end with a few guardian trees again. Now here we are headed back towards the clubhouse, and this is definitely a very fun hole and very scoreable too, should you be able to get off 2 decent shots. So the common trend here at Tolfers is that the adjacent fairways are OB. So there's OB both on the left and the right, with a mano in play as well. So I grab a defender, throw it as hard as I possibly can, knowing that it would fade right back to the center of the fairway. And I put myself in perfect position for birdie here. I'm just trying to throw another defender on a sidearm this time, try to get up to the basket, just pull over on a low, and a cut rolls into the ground. So I don't have much left here, so I opt for a standstill, just trying to get as close to the basket as possible. But I ended up pulling over on it a little and actually put myself inside of this Christmas tree for an awkward little lie, trying to save par here. And thankfully do so. Hole 6 is a par 4, 598 feet, 182 meters, slightly downhill, with OB on the left and the right in the adjacent fairways. And this one slightly slopes downhill, making it very important to really gauge your distance and play to your own strengths here. Again, the basket is placed on an old golf green, and we see some pretty big ground play sometimes on this hole, especially once it's dry out. So at this point, I'm just trying to build some sort of rhythm and really throw the disc that I'm vibing well with. I'm throwing the same defender I threw off the tee on the last hole, knowing it will hyzer back, almost trying to throw a little flex shot with it, knowing that I'm not bringing that OB right to play. So here I landed in this rough that is actually inbounds, and I have a relatively easy shot here. Not much trees in the way. Throwing my Explorer. As we watch that disappear into the blue sky background, and hyzer back perfectly into the green. So I gave myself a fairly short putt for a birdie here, even though I try miss right. Slowly crawling myself back towards par. Hole 7 is a par 3, 266 feet, 81 meters, with a bunch of guardian trees early right, just before the basket. And this is that one mistake to avoid on this hole, is to really end up inside those trees. Getting out of them can be a pain. So here I grab my Fortress, just hoping to have the disc fade in just before the guardian trees. But I actually end up throwing that way too straight and landing just short of the guardian trees. Now from where my lie is, I actually cannot see the basket, so I had to run over to the left, take a look at exactly where the basket is, try to visualize this. Just trying to get the disc as close to the basket as possible at this point. There's a slight downslope behind the basket too. I take my easy par and we move on to hole 8, which is a par 3, 244 feet, 74 meters long. And just like the last hole, we have some Christmas trees just before the basket protecting the green on this side slope. A short sidearm hole, but like we've seen on other tee pads here, we have a tight gap off the tee. Shouldn't be a problem for most people. I just grab my Justice here, throw it sidearm. And actually end up hitting the right tree. And I'm lucky to even get out of that gap, honestly. I put myself in a very bad spot. At this point, I'm scrambling for par, throwing my Justice again on a sidearm hyzer, just trying to give myself any sort of putt I can. Here I am somewhere in circle 2, putting uphill. Absolute must make right now for a par save. And I was ecstatic to make that. It was a big sigh of relief after that for sure. Hole 9 is a par 4, 511 feet, 156 meters. We have an OB road on the right and an OB adjacent fairway on the left. Now at this point, it's important to thank John Hubbard and Greg Knapp for these hole previews and the drone footage that you'll actually see throughout this YouTube video. And I'll make sure to add their links into the description, so go show them some love and support for all the work that they've done too. So hole 9, I grab my sorcerer off the tee pad, just making sure I turn something over and not really bring that OB left into play. I do that fairly perfectly. I'm left with this little awkward lie with one tree blocking the main gap, so I actually opt for a sidearm, try to go around this big tree that's guarding the basket. I throw an Ohta here, which is a Firebird-like disc. Just try to throw it high to make sure it fades back towards the basket after it gets around the tree. Now I was actually lucky to avoid the OB parking lot that's just behind the camera here. I'm putting back towards the basket. As I make my tester putt here for birdie, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to the front 9 of the Tolfers Blue layout, and make sure you leave a like and subscribe to my channel to make sure you don't miss out on any more disc golf videos. I finished the front 9 at a score of +1. Don't forget to tune into the back 9 to see if we can lower that score.